Okay, let's try to clean an airbrush. This is the third video of the airbrushing introduction series that I'm doing. And this one I think is probably going to be the most important because this is the one that you really don't want to mess up. You can always adjust paint, you can always adjust thinner, airflow, all of that stuff. If you don't clean your airbrush well, it's kind of hard to come back from that. You might have to replace a few parts or throw a few things across the room, or pray to the ancient Aztec airbrushing gods for forgiveness. Either way, it would be very annoying. So what I did was I went ahead and put in some unthinned Tamiya NATO Black, which is the same stuff that I used last time. And just to show you really quick what this looks like unthinned. It spits. Hoping you can kind of see this, that it just it spits out very badly, which is not the kind of thing that you want to be dealing with. Anyway, really quick before I get into actually cleaning the airbrush, I want to talk about paint color changes, because oftentimes you'll be painting and you'll want to change colors to something else mid-project, and that's something that is totally fine to do. It's very simple. What I would do in that case is, let me back that up just a little bit more. What I would do in that case is I would fill the cup with thinner, preferably some kind of cheap thinner that you're not too worried about using. Isopropyl alcohol, 90% is really great for this. It cuts through nearly every acrylic paint. If you want something a little bit stronger, I have a bottle that I decant some, not this one, this one, yes. I decant some lacquer thinner in, which is just your hardware store lacquer thinner. It's all the same. Cellulose thinners are fairly similar regardless of where you get them. Tamiya's lacquer thinner is a little bit watered down, and then of course there's like the Mr. Leveling thinner, which has the retarder added in. But for just plain lacquer thinner, you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, and get some basic lacquer thinner for cleaning. Obviously it smells terrible, but it'll clean a lot better. But anyway, for color changes, it's very easy just to spray in some isopropyl alcohol into the paint cup, and then what I'll do is I'll bring it over here. In fact, I'll go ahead and do this because this is the same start of the process if you're cleaning the airbrush. So we're just gonna fill a little bit of that up, and then we're gonna start spraying into this spray out pot. As I'm doing that, I'm gonna get my stirring brush and mix that around a little bit. Continue to spray that out. You can kind of see that there's still a good bit of paint in there, but it's been thinned down a good bit now, and it's more alcohol than anything. We're gonna keep spraying that out. If you want this to go faster, you can hike the pressure up to 40 or so if your compressor will go that far, and it will make very short work of that. You can almost see that it is almost empty, and there we go. Now at this point, I would probably pour a little bit more thinner in there, swish it around a little bit, and I would keep doing this until it looked pretty clear. And that would probably take a little bit, because this is a very dark paint. Do just a little bit more in there. You can see from the surface, I'm still getting a little paint coming through, just a little bit. It would probably take a while to get out all of the paint, if I was switching to a similar color or a color that I wasn't too worried about getting a little bit darker, then I would probably go ahead and pour the next paint in right now. And obviously mix it up in your measuring cup, pour it in, and you're good to go. If I was moving to, say, white and I wanted it to be a perfect white color, I would probably keep going with that same method of putting alcohol in and blasting it out, because you want to make sure that all of that NATO black or whatever darker color is gone. If you're going from a lighter color to a darker color, you're probably not going to have to do this that much. Black is going to overtake just about anything. So if I had been spraying like a medium gray, deck tan, any kind of like light grays, even white for that matter, if I've been spraying that and I go through the process of pouring in the alcohol and spraying it out, I could probably do that 2 or 3 times tops, and then I could put the black in and it would be just fine. Paint color changes are very easy to do. They're very quick, and as soon as my little buddy stops talking to me, it's very easy to find these spray out cups. These are airbrush. I'm pretty sure they're called spray out cups. This one's by Sparmax. Iwata makes one. There's a lot of different companies that make them. All it is just a glass or a plastic cup in the bottom, a top that you can actually put an airbrush and actually fit it to where it's all pretty much airtight over the seal. And then it's got a filter that filters out particulates. It does not filter out smell. So you should still be wearing your respirator at this point, particularly because you may be spraying just a little bit on a model. You're going to be actually spraying a lot more to do a color change at this point. So you want to make sure that you're wearing your respirator. You're not keeping your coffee near your work area like I'm doing right now. But anyway, if you are done airbrushing, I'm going to go through the typical process of what I do at the end. Now, if you are going to come back to this tomorrow, you should be fine doing another rinse or so in the airbrush. I would probably do a rinse with lacquer thinner at this point, and again, spray it all out in the paint cup, the spray out cup, and you should be good until the next day. I don't like to let things sit too long. Some people do. I would rather make sure that there's not going to be anything that dries up. So to start with, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the hose just because it makes it easier to work on, and you don't need the air pressure anymore at this point until the very end. I'm going to pull back on the trigger. This is going to pull the needle a little bit far back into the handle. We're going to take this part off. There's the nozzle. The nozzle is probably being held on right now by paint because there's paint that's come down and it's kind of creating a seal around that. So we're just going to gently take that off. There's the needle still sticking out. Then we're going to let go of the trigger. We're going to take the back part off. Loosen the chucking nut just a little bit. And we're going to slide the needle out forward. There's a reason for this. And the reason is, and unfortunately there's already been paint that's gotten behind there, but you want to try to minimize any paint getting behind this point because there's an actual packing nut that's in there. It's a Teflon packing nut that is designed to keep paint from getting back in here, especially getting it into the air trigger assembly. I try to minimize that as much as possible, so I always remove the needle out the front. And when I put it in, I'm going to put it in, follow it just the opposite way. But I'll show you that in a minute. So at this point, we're going to do a couple things. I've got 2 containers of lacquer thinner that I'm going to be using to clean stuff. First thing, I'm going to have a pair of tweezers handy, and I'm going to grab the nozzle and not drop it in, but gently place it in so that it gets submerged in that lacquer thinner. I'm going to let it sit for a second. We're going to open up our other container, or I can use this one really, it doesn't really matter. I can use this one, that's just fine. Ooh, almost dropped that. And I've dipped my Q-tip in the lacquer thinner, and I'm just going to run the Q-tip along the edge to get up all of that paint just about as much as you can. At this point, we're also going to do the actual tip of the needle just gently, very gently. You don't want to rub, gosh, this sounds very suggestive. You don't want to rub the tip too hard. I'm going to get a paper towel. Try not to damage anything in the process. And it looks pretty clean, but as you can tell, there's still a little bit of paint on there. If you want to get the Q-tip again and dip it on there just to make sure, we'll wipe that through a couple times, and that got off a little bit more paint. That should be about it. Now I'm going to put the needle to the side because the needle is clean at this point as far as I'm concerned. We don't need to deal with it again. I'm going to be using some Dentec brushes. These, I'll show you what not to use first. Let me do this. These are Dentec interdental brushes. These are designed to kind of replace floss in case you have like plaque or something that you really need to get to. It's a very flexible metal right here with very gentle brushes on the end. These are perfect for cleaning airbrushes. What you don't want to use is this stupid little set of really hardened steel shafts here with really hard bristles. These things, I started out using these, I think like most people do, but these will damage the chrome coating on the inside of the paint cup, and they'll damage other parts too. So I keep these around just to show people what not to use. And occasionally, like on the outside of the brush, if there's like paint buildup, you could use this and like brush off any gunk that you get, but you still need to be careful. These bristles are still very hard, and this metal is very sharp, and it will cut right through that chrome and damage the brush. So this is what an interdental brush looks like before I modified it. This one I used an X-Acto blade and I cut back a good bit of it so that I could get it further into the brush. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use same Q-tip I was using before, and I'm just going to dip it in a little bit of lacquer thinner, and we're going to clean the inside of the paint cup. Some people don't actually clean the paint cup. You technically don't really have to, because it doesn't matter how much, if there's like a thin layer of paint that gets left in there. I just do it because it looks better, but it's not going to decrease the functionality of the airbrush. It's just, you really don't want that. If you leave paint in there and then you put like a lacquer based paint in there, it may reactivate that. So I think it's good just to clean it out just for the heck of it. Now, get some lacquer thinner without bumping the camera. Don't do that. And we're going to go through the tip in here. We're going to make sure that the brush goes a little bit back, and you can see there's paint. Do this a couple of times until it looks pretty clear. You're probably not going to be able to get it 100% clear. That's okay. The rest of it will dry out and work itself out. The main thing that you want to do is get out as much as you can. The next thing is this part right here. I just want to make sure that that gets cleaned very well. This is the place where the nozzle sits and seats itself, and you don't want the nozzle to be off kilter, because if it's off just a little bit, it's not going to work as well. So at this point, this part is clean. So now that our nozzle has been sitting in there for a little bit, we're going to carefully take it out. If you're using lacquer thinner, it'd probably be advisable to wear gloves, but I'm not. These interdental brushes are perfect for getting into airbrush nozzles. These will even get into some of the smaller nozzles that some of the higher end airbrushes use. Still a little bit of paint in there. The longer you paint, the more gunk is probably going to be up in there. And then if you're using a clear coat, make sure that you go through there several times so that you're not leaving anything, because you're not going to be able to see the clear coat on the interdental brushes when you pull those out. All right, the final step is something that a guy named Will Pattison taught me, which is buying these paper points. These are for, it's also a dental tool. These are for when, oh Lord, he's got to talk to me again. Sounds like that's some really anxious guy pounding out Morse code. Anyway, these are for when dentists drill holes in your teeth for cavities or something, and they need to put something in there to absorb blood or to just keep it open before they put a filling in. So I'm just going to grab one of these. These are the actual sizes of them. I don't really use these top three, but it really doesn't matter. I don't really need two of them. I need one of them. That one got a little bit bent, but that's going to be okay. So these are paper. They're rolled up paper. They have about the same consistency as index cards or something like that. So I'm going to dip it in a little bit of lacquer thinner. And we are going to carefully feed it up through and out through the nozzle tip, which I'm hoping that if I can get that just right. There we go. Hoping that you can see that. It's going right through. And you don't have to push it through all the way. I would definitely not push it through all the way, because despite that nozzle tip being stainless steel, it's still very thin and very easy to damage. So at that point, this thing's clean. Set that aside. We're going to go ahead and cover up our lacquer thinner, because again, open bottles breeds chaos. Close up the paper points. I don't have links for all of this stuff, by the way, but if you search eBay, you can find these by like a 50 count for less than $10. And you can often find these things for like $3 or $4. They're super cheap. They're super easy to get, and you'll probably find a lot of uses for them besides just airbrush cleaning. Okay, so putting things back together. Wipe off the needle one more time and insert the needle from the back. Insert the needle back first. The reason that I do not put the needle in from the front, like slide it into the back like a lot of people show it being done, is because I don't want to damage the tip of the needle. Not that that would really happen. I mean, plenty of people do it the way that I'm describing. Plenty of people do it the opposite way, but this is the way that I do it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to slide that all the way back until you cannot see the needle at all. Then we've got our nozzle. Gently put the nozzle back in, make sure it seats in there. If it's in eye water, you're going to feel that it sits in there just perfectly. Then we're going to carefully put the whole nozzle cap back on. Screw that down. And then we're going to gently loosen the nut and then gently slide the needle back to the front. And if you've done this correct, you can actually feel the needle hitting the nozzle, and it feels like metal on metal contact. Like, I can do that, and I feel the contact of it. If it feels spongy when you push the needle forward all the way, then it probably means that there's paint in the nozzle, and you need to take it out and do the whole cleaning process again. But I can feel that is a very solid in the way that I pushed it forward. It feels like metal touching metal, and that's exactly what you want. And then we'll put the back handle of the airbrush back on. And there you go. Now, as a final thing to do, if you want to test it, you could do it this way. I would normally do this with lacquer thinner, but I don't really want to spray lacquer thinner right now. I'm just going to use some isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to put a couple drops in the front, and I'm just going to push down without pulling back. If you push down, All you should have is air. That's all you should get. Nothing there. That was just air. Just air on my hand. Sorry that wasn't quite in frame. Just air. If you're pushing down on the trigger and you get anything that's not air, that means that something's messed up. Probably what happened was you didn't push the needle far enough, or there's paint maybe in that nozzle area that's preventing the needle from going far enough forward. Then after that, we're just going to spray out that alcohol. That's going to spray out any remaining flecks of paint. And now it's clean. I can put this thing away and store it for months on end if I need to. I have an airbrush that I've used a few times like a year ago, and I haven't used it since, and I can still go in there and like feel the needle, and it still feels just fine. There's no paint in there at all. It's perfectly fine. So that is it's substantial. Yes, it takes a while to clean, but it is something that you need to be aware of, because when I first started out, I wasn't cleaning well enough. I was basically just shooting thinner through the paint cup and out. That's perfect for a color change, but you saw that I did that flushing out method several times. There was still some remnants of paint left in there. You can do that a dozen times and it's still not going to get everything out of there, and it's definitely not going to get any paint that gets back in here. It's not going to get that out. So you really need to make sure that, like, when you're done, take it apart, clean it properly, and then carefully put it back together so you're not damaging anything. But I had paint get clogged up in the nozzle, and I had to replace the nozzle. Nozzles are much more expensive. They're the most fragile, easy to damage part. The needle, those things are like $10. Those aren't bad to replace. I don't mind replacing a needle if I have to, but the needles are built pretty well for my Wada. I'm more worried about the nozzle. And yeah, I think that basically does everything. I have opinions about ultrasonic cleaners, which are not very positive. I would not use an ultrasonic cleaner to clean your airbrush at first. You need to learn how to take it apart and clean it manually. If you get to a point where you want to use an ultrasonic cleaner, I would use only water, and you have to take apart everything. Like you have to take apart the front part, the back, the entire trigger assembly. You have to take off any O-rings. You would have to then remove very carefully the trigger assembly that is up in there that takes a while to get out, and then you would have to remove the Teflon packing nut that is right in there. That's a lot, because you don't want the ultrasonic cleaner to damage any of that. Ultrasonic cleaner is probably not going to damage the chrome or anything like that, but it could damage those softer parts, and unless you're going to take the time to do all that, you really should not be putting this thing into an ultrasonic cleaner. If you're an advanced user and you know how to take apart everything, and you maybe you want to put it through an ultrasonic cleaner like once a year, that would be fine. I'm sure you would know what you're doing at that point. But if you're new to this, just learn how to take it apart. Practice doing that before you ever shoot any paint. Practice taking it apart and putting it back together. It will save you time, it'll save you money, it'll make you feel a lot more confident with the airbrush, with how it's made. You'll get to see the air inlets, where everything lines up. The way that I described the airbrush in the first video, it'll make more sense when you start taking it apart. But spend some time. Oh my gosh, that little anxious Morse code dude is just going like crazy tonight. I don't know why it kicked on right then anyway. Just spend some time getting to know your airbrush and taking it apart, putting it back together, so that when you have to clean it, you'll know what you need to do, and then have everything set out, because you don't want to be looking for a piece or something, tweezers or something, when you're in the middle of cleaning. And yeah, that's it. Happy airbrushing. And if you have any questions, again, leave them down below. Like, subscribe, do all the things that, you know, all the professional people ask you to do. I'm asking you that too, because I'm not professional, but please, you know, do the little button things. Yeah, please. Yeah. Thank you.